welcome back to Out of Home Insider, the loudest voice in out of home. Took a couple of weeks off to do some deep self-reflection, really think about the next evolution of Out of Home Insider, something that's only made possible by you supporting the show. So thank you for your support. Whether this is your first episode or your 104th, thank you so much for continuing to support the show. A few exciting things coming out for the Out of Home Insider brand, all free, all designed to add more value and impact for you and our community. More to follow on that, but today's guest is Deanna Berry. Deanna is the Chief Operating Officer of McWhorter Capital, a private equity firm that made its appearance in Out of Home by way of Horton Outdoor, which was recently acquired by Trailhead Media. Deanna and I, we discussed the opportunities for brands to engage collegiate athletes via the NIL agreement, how private equity approaches our industry, and a whole lot more. Special thanks to OneScreen.ai for continuing to make the show possible. Check out OneScreen.ai, click Learn More, and check out all the great resources and research, all designed to help you sell more or to help you unlock the power of out of home for your brand. Lots of great stuff. Check out OneScreen.ai. But without further ado, let's do this. Let's go.
Welcome, everybody, to the Out of Home Insider Show, a podcast like no other, hosted by the one and only Tim Rowe. Get ready to have some knowledge dropped on you and to be entertained, because nothing's more valuable than food for your brain. So sit back, relax, we're about to dive in as the best industry podcast is about to begin.
When it comes to like the NIL stuff, I'm not super savvy. Like, I get it. I know what it is and that it gives college athletes the opportunity to monetize their personal brands, but maybe unpack that idea a little bit so I can get some fodder to grab onto.
I don't think that anybody really knows the ins and outs of it because it's so brand new and it came out of nowhere. I think for all the talk about it for years, it seemed to really take people by surprise when it actually happened. And what little I do know about it, and I'm fascinated by it, but I don't, like I said, I don't think anybody has a full grasp on it. Every state is different. So once the NCAA or whatever, is that what it is? Yeah. Once they kind of legalized it every state developed legislation that kind of regulates it in that particular state. And even down to different universities handle it differently. So kind of the people at the top of this that have paved the way are lawyers. I mean, attorneys are getting involved because there's so many things you can screw up on getting involved in it. But what I've seen is agencies that already dealt with influencers that were, already kind of spearheading that type of marketing are the ones that naturally evolved into this NIL stuff. So, they already have some attorneys on staff or, people that have written up all of these waivers and contracts for them. And really from there, all you have to do is tweak it based on the state, that the athlete's in, based on the university. Like even in Georgia, the way that the legislation was written, it gives the universities the ability to hold back a pretty large percentage of it to put in like a big fund, I guess. And they get a prorated percentage of that back when they graduate. But in the meantime, it's used for scholarships for different athletes. And the University of Georgia turned that down. They said, nope, we don't want any part of holding these athletes' money. We're just going to, if they make money, it's their money. Yeah. But Georgia's law gives them the ability to do that. So some universities are taking a cut, basically.
Which is interesting because then as a prospective college, student athlete, you're looking at the school based on.
Absolutely. It's not going to be about like
who's
what
touching my money,
where, what school my parents went to. It's going to be like, who has the loosest NIL policies and where can I make the most money?
No kidding. Right. I want to play for a Florida team. If I'm a professional athlete, I want to be in Florida because I don't want to pay state taxes.
Right.
Right. Like there become these incentive structures for colleges that are very outside the traditional realm of it's a good school or it's competitive. And, I'm sure as a student athlete, you want to be at a school where your sport is competitive. But if it came down to, hey, school A is taking my money and holding it till graduation.
Right.
And school B is
all
saying,
else is
hey,
equal, if all things are equal,
if
I'm
all
going to go
things
with
are
a school
equal,
that has, the more favorable NIL policies for me.
because there's a shelf life, right? Like there's a shelf life to being a student athlete and having a brand. How many times do we see like
90% of these college athletes aren't going pro?
No, they're lucky.
Money.
Right. They're lucky to have made it this far. They're fortunate. They're the top 1% of the 1% at this level. And the reality is the majority of them aren't going to the next level. The majority of them are not getting big deals from Nike in the next 2-3 years, but they might be able to cash in for now. And that with, a solid education. I mean, why not?
Right, exactly.
The school profits from them being
right.
there.
It doesn't affect their scholarships. So they're still getting their education paid for. This is just living money. We'll pack away a little bit in savings.
Well, I'm in. I'm all in for paying the student athletes, and I think it's a cool opportunity as a brand to be able to leverage talent, especially and maybe this is a segue to out of home that we can explore, which is like the locality, the community aspect of college athletics, right? When we think about a big time school, you think about the ecosystem that big time school impacts, right? I think of Penn State and Happy Valley, Clemson, right? And you start to think about these kind of iconic schools, and the reality is that the athletes are celebrities. They're not only celebrities at a national level, but they're celebrities locally.
Right.
And for a business to be able to leverage that,
the program gets all the money for, what they bring to it.
Right. But why wouldn't I, as a local or regional business, want to, maybe I don't have the money for, a top tier professional talent, but maybe there's a student athlete or even a stable of student athletes. And I could have, a few different folks for the price of having a big time athlete. So,
and I think you're going to see that a lot with these smaller colleges who, you do have a certain loyalty within their alumni and all of that. So you can find a small mom and pop, or even, a 3 or 4 location franchise of some sort, that they can spend their NIL money on like the entire football team for, like a Kennesaw State University. And if you put that up on billboards and they're in their school colors, I think there are some rules where they can't actually wear their school name, but that you can basically put a jersey on them with their number, and it looks, everybody can tell. It's very obvious what school they play for. But I think that's the benefit there in these smaller schools, is to get groups of athletes together, and that way you get the whole girls volleyball team, something like that. I think is impactful. Plus it just gives a little exposure to the school's program, and it gives a little exposure to the athletes who wouldn't normally be, getting a bunch of NIL money.
No way. Right. And I mean, they're just the same as any other, college kid. They're trying to, keep a few bucks in their wallet for beer and for food and that sort of thing. And oftentimes being a student athlete, you don't have time for a job.
No,
you don't have time for a job.
You have actually classes. You have to go and take your classes and stuff. And then you got practice every other minute of the day. So
right. So when are you supposed to go make a few bucks? And if you can leverage your personal brand and your social media tools and followings and communities and all those things, I say I'm all for it.
We've got an attorney in Georgia, and I'm not sure if he practices in any other states, but Morgan & Morgan. And
of course,
he was one of the first ones I've seen to jump on the NIL bandwagon with OOH. And so he has a lot of billboards up with different college football players, a couple of basketball players from Georgia Tech and University of Georgia. And it's like the campaign is size matters. And so he's got these big offensive linemen, and it's a great, very effective campaign. And you don't necessarily, it doesn't have University of Georgia endorsing him, but clearly you can tell with the jersey colors and the number. And if you know what the guy looks like, he's right there, so it's, that was one of the first ones I've seen to actively jump on NIL and marry it with outdoor. And I thought it was pretty brilliant.
It's pretty brilliant indeed. And Morgan's one of the top spenders nationally on outdoor. Mm-hmm. And I haven't seen that in other markets. I'd be interested, if there's anybody listening that has seen it in other markets. I'd love to get some pictures of that too. And maybe we could incorporate that. But it makes a lot of sense too when you think about kind of how played out the legal category is. Injured, question mark, insert vanity phone
car
number.
wreck, whatever.
Right? Like, it's so super predictable, and I get it. It works. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if you're going to be spending a ton of money and you can make it a little bit unique and a little bit more contextually relevant and a little bit more human than just injured question mark and, your logo up there, then why not? And that's a fun way to certainly mix up kind of a boring category. Especially
in the South, college football is like a religion. So if you put something up there that people can relate to, that's automatically going to leave a positive brand, that's just going to be a positive brand recognition there.
And shoot, here we are talking about it as a college kid, right? We're talking about it. And I would imagine that while it's really, really cool running out into a stadium of 100,000 screaming fans on a Saturday, and smashing your head against somebody else's for 60 minutes. It's probably just as cool, if not even a little bit cooler, to see yourself on a billboard.
Well, it's really cool if you see yourself on a billboard and you're getting the money and not your football program.
Even cooler, right? It's even cooler. It's
like, I'm getting the check for this. They aren't. So. And
like getting into the economics too of it, right? These NIL sponsorships, I mean, it can vary from Kennesaw State to, if you were in my town here in Hackettstown, it's Centenary University, right? It's a little D3 school. You could probably throw these kids a couple $100 and throw them up on a billboard, which isn't all that expensive. And right when you combine those two things, it's
the whole team show up at your grand opening or your ribbon cutting or, whatever.
Sure. Right. But it's not a huge outlay of capital necessarily to explore some of these NIL opportunities, and billboards aren't all that expensive when we think about them, on a local level in a local market, not in a top DMA, but in some of these second and third tier markets, it really becomes something that as a brand is quite reasonable and just makes a ton of sense.
There's a college athlete for every budget.
Right. So, Deanna, I'd love to, get from how you were an Arabic linguist in the Marine Corps to out of home. And we kind of touched on it, briefly there in the open, but, as these things usually do, they just segue into like a really natural conversation and you find yourself full blown into an episode. But how did you go from being an Arabic linguist and, United States Marine Corps, Semper Fi, to being so in love with out of home?
There were a couple stops along the way. I mean, a couple detours and a couple stops along the way, I guess. Well, I would say right after I got out of the Marine Corps, and I spent 4 years there. They taught me Arabic, and then it probably took them a year and a half to teach me Arabic, and then I used the language for about 2 years in the Marine Corps. And then I moved back to Atlanta. There's not a whole lot of opportunity to speak or, converse in Arabic. So my skills would be rusty at best, I think at this point. I do still try to
love out of home. Can you say I love out of home in Arabic?
No, not right now. I can say I love, and then I have no idea what out of home is. But I'll have to go look that one up afterwards. Yeah. There's probably no direct translation to out of home, but I'm sure there's one for billboards. But yeah, and most of our focus too was on military terminology as well. But they taught us modern standard Arabic, so that most of the militaries, regardless of the dialects that they spoke, would their military over the radio communications were done in modern standard Arabic, as well as all the news broadcasts. So it was kind of the one constant there. But then we also did get some training in different dialects depending on what shop we were going to work in. So the dialect that I specialized in was Iraqi dialect.
Wow.
But it's kind of crazy. You think dialects aren't necessarily like accents here, like you have a Southern accent or Northern accent. I mean, the differences are a lot larger than just the accent and different pronunciation of letters. I mean, it's a lot of times it's a whole different words.
Coffee.
Yeah. No. Coffee talk.
So you went to the Marine Corps. You learned Arabic. then you came out and you're like, all right, what the heck am I going to do with this?
What am I going to do? What did I do after that? I went to a temp agency, and they placed me at Aaron Rents as a temp in the legal department there. So I was assistant to the VP of legal. I did that for about 6 months. And then when it came time for me to either go permanent or find another temp job, I was offered a full-time position there. I was offered a full-time position by the VP of real estate and one from the president of the office furniture rental division. And that's where I went because it was a marketing position. And that's where I was interested in. So I spent the next 5 years there, did marketing, merchandising. I ended up being a furniture buyer, which was interesting. Cool. We had our own manufacturing plants in South Georgia. So, I mean, it was, it was vertically integrated all the way. And it was really neat to be a part of not only going out to the furniture markets and sourcing different styles and lines, but then to go back to our manufacturer and, specify them and have them made and actually send them out to our stores and determine what brands were best for a rental lineup. And that was the big difference. We weren't selling it. So this stuff had to be
right.
built.
At some point,
this was built like
getting
tanks,
it back.
Yeah, we're going to get it back. Definitely. So it's got to be built differently than just the stuff that you see in the Staples or the Office Max.
What are some of those differences? Just as the curiosity in me is now curious.
Well, like the drawers are going to have like different, the way that all the boards attach, just like dowel, all of that, the doweling, and then also mostly the laminate. So most, I guess, office furniture to get out of a box you put together is just a melamine, and then rental office furniture is going to be a high pressure laminate. And then they'll have an edge band that's, a thicker laminate, like a 3 mil and stuff like that, just because it's going to get banged around. And then you got to be able to take it apart, reconfigure it, put it back together without all the, the crappy, particle board breaking in there. So it's all just heavier duty.
Everyone just shuddered at the thought of particle board.
Well,
that's interesting. All right. So we went,
is it really interesting?
I mean, what isn't interesting?
Office furniture.
I think it's interesting. I'm looking at the desk here and I know it's not real wood, but like I'm like, okay, it's built pretty well, but like, could this survive the rental market? I don't know.
Yeah. And then you also had, you had, if it was more permanent furniture and it was maybe for the executive, they would want a wood veneer top. And so they wouldn't get a laminate. So you could not rent a wood veneer top because it's going to get scratched the first time they write with a pencil, on a piece of paper. It's you're indenting the veneer. So
right. I just want that resolute desk kind of look and feel, I suppose. So all right. So Marine Corps to Aaron's to what was the next stop?
I think along the way, I got married, had a baby, went back to school, finished college at Kennesaw State University. I'd done a couple years at University of Georgia before I joined the Marine Corps. So I went back and finished later. I had a couple different jobs, mostly operations management. And then I ended up here at McWhorter Capital Partners. He was kind of launching, Josh McWhorter, who's launching this private investment firm. It was a little bit different of a model than, it's not a big private equity. It's not exactly venture capital, kind of a combination of everything. Mm-hmm. We started, he had purchased a heating and air company, a CC's Pizza franchise location.
Hey, welcome to CC. Listen, the Jersey guy in me, like that's tough to see, because we got good pizza.
$5 buffet.
But
I know it's not.
But do you know what? You can get French toast pizza and macaroni and cheese pizza in the same place. Yeah. So
that stuff is good. The cinnamon, the cinnamon bread. Oh man. But he had hired me really because at the time, social media was just becoming a thing. Think about Facebook and Twitter and Facebook marketing was all about going viral. You didn't have to pay for ads back in the day.
Deanna.
What?
We're aging ourselves. We're aging ourselves.
God, I know. I think back and I'm like, when Facebook shows you the memories, and it's like 2009, and I'm, like it's asking you what you're doing, and you're like, I am sitting in the parking lot. Like, it didn't really want to know what you were thinking. Like, what are you thinking? I'm really sad. Yes, nothing more embarrassing than looking at your 10-year-old Facebook post in your memories. I don't know, what were we doing? But, I think back then, it was a whole new way to market, and you could get things to go viral. You could grow these business Facebook pages without having to pay them so much. Right. You remember when you couldn't comment on a post unless you liked the page?
Yeah, that's true. Wow, I forgot that was a thing. They
killed that function because it was too easy. It was too easy for people to grow their followings because,
correct.
All you do is post a picture and do a little quiz or whatever, and then they had to like your page. Well, that went away. All pages are public. People control you without liking your page. You can't ban them. They're whatever. So, that was the height of social media marketing, and it worked for us at the time, and we really grew those brands. I did all of the graphic design. I, recreated the logos where we could. Obviously, we couldn't do it for CC's, but and then along the way, we purchased more real estate. We had quite a few vacation condos down in Florida. So the fund has grown. We've bought and sold countless companies, different types of industries. And then around 2015, we bought our first set of billboards, and we treated them as real estate assets. We didn't treat them like billboards. We just thought, oh, look, we bought some billboards. And I went on like Rocket Lawyer and downloaded a rental contract. That's what I used for my advertisers. It was kind of crazy. So we started with those seven billboards was in our first plant. Then we bought another 5, and then we bought the big one. It was 43, pretty much all statics. But at that point, we realized this should totally be a different company. So we launched Horton Outdoor, and that was in 2017. So it officially became its own outdoor company in 2017.
Wow.
And that's how I got here. That's how I got into outdoor. Was our first 7 billboard purchase in 2015.
Let's go all the way back to that. 2015, we buy 7 billboards. Where are they in the country?
They're all in Cartersville, Georgia.
All in Carter. And what should we know
real
about
estate broker? He owned them. He wasn't doing much with them. We bought them for next to nothing. Looking back on it, it's like, whoa.
Stole them.
2 of those, one of those we've been able to convert to a digital. So if you look at the acquisition value, the purchase price versus the monthly revenue that we got from that plant, because I track all of ours by the plant, the acquisition value versus like the monthly revenue, and kind of keep a little percentage for each different acquisition. And I mean, it was just mind blowing to see, the amount of money it costs us to make probably one of our highest grossing acquisitions.
Wow. And knowing what you know now, right? It sounds like almost some not knowing played to your advantage there with a really great acquisition. Knowing what you know now, what was it that made it such a great opportunity? Like what was it about the deal that was so initially interesting and ultimately made it so fruitful?
Well, I would say the reason behind the price is probably an off the record conversation that you and I can have later.
Yeah.
But really it's because it was undersold. I mean, it was, like I said, they were owned by a real estate broker. That was not his business. He had just kind of come upon them at some point in his career. They had great locations, great visibility, and nobody was selling them. So that was the main reason they weren't sold.
Like a great yard sale find.
Pretty much.
That's awesome. I mean, that's super exciting. And especially in 2022, when it seems like there's all the best deals have already been discovered, and there's so many of those opportunities in out of home. So that was 2015. We got 7 signs in Cartersville,
and it came with
Georgia.
4 easements of the 7.
For anybody listening that's maybe heard of an easement or doesn't know what an easement is, explain why that's significant. Maybe it's like the liquor license metaphor.
So a land lease versus an easement, when in the billboard industry, means the difference between paying up to 20% of your gross revenue to the landowner for use of that space, versus not ever having to pay them again. So like at one point in time, somebody went to the landowner and said, I'll give you $5,000 for a permanent easement right here. It's, they took all their money up front, and then we purchased the easement from the billboard owner. It was all lumped into the price. Honestly, what we paid for the entire plant and the easements was still less than what the actual, just the physical assets were worth.
Wow. So 7 signs, 4 easements. That meant that we were only paying rent on 3 of them.
Correct. And those were like 10 to 15% leases.
I mean, you don't have to be super math whiz to understand that the economics of this deal just make a ton of sense.
Yeah.
So you got 7. You said, wow, this is a great business to be in. We're looking at it still as, short-term or relative midterm real estate rental property, right? I've got square footage to rent. So you go out and buy some more.
We did. We bought 5 more, and then we bought 43 more. And so
then we just said,
all in all, we had 146 structures in Georgia, Alabama, and Florida when we sold them in October to Trailhead.
Yeah, that's a pretty big operation. So how did you take 7 signs, 5 signs, 43? How did you take those and really build a company around that?
I think once you enter that industry, then people just know. And so when there's deals to be made, they come to you. I mean, I think most of them were done through brokers. Some of them were done through our investors. We have several investors that either are now or have been in the billboard industry. They're actually the ones that encouraged us to get into that business. So, 2 of them are on our board of directors. It's one of those incestuous industries, kind of like office furniture I was talking about. Like once you were in the office furniture industry, it's hard to get out. And then everybody in that industry. They might be at a different company now than they were 5 years ago, but you still know of them, and you can give them a call and take advantage of their expertise. And the outdoor industry is very much the same. So once you're in it, it becomes almost an addiction.
Yeah, I definitely I got the taste, and I'm addicted too. So, but in terms of like stitching it together, I'm sure at some point you had to start building sales teams and operationalizing that and finding, folks to go hang billboards and office people. At what stage of that did you realize, okay, we're going to have to build a team, or did we acqui-hire some of that and start to build around a core team that maybe came along with some inventory?
And that's pretty much how that was built. Most of the initial sales team that we had probably came with acquisitions, or either there were really strong independent sales reps that, were already selling that inventory. And so they continued to do that for us until we had enough inventory in any given market to justify hiring someone, full-time, a full-time account rep. So that's kind of how we did it. And we operated pretty lean most of the time. I mean, I think in Alabama, at any given point, we had less than 3 sales reps. In Georgia, we had, 2 to 3. We had a superstar sales rep that pretty much handled the bulk of our inventory in Georgia, which was all Northwest Georgia. And then we, had a scattering of inventory down in South Georgia and Southeast Georgia. So, and a couple up in Northeast Georgia. But, those were all kind of handled by just a couple smaller market reps.
Wow. I mean, that's unbelievable. And a successful endeavor and exit. Congratulations to yourselves and to Trailhead, of course. But now you're out. Now you don't have any billboards. And that's a problem. we got to get some more billboards. What's any plans for to re-enter the space, or are we looking?
I think we always try to keep our options open. So obviously, with any sort of disposition like that, there's some sort of non-compete, and that's limited to certain geographic areas and a certain time period. But I expect that at some point you'll probably see McWhorter Capital Partners again in outdoor in some manner.
Cool.
Some capacity.
We will stay tuned. What sort of projects and businesses are in the portfolio outside? Obviously, there's nothing out of home related, but what sort of stuff is in there that's really exciting that the team is most excited about?
Land development, real estate, land development.
Hard assets.
It's a tough market right now for commercial real estate, just because we're at the peak of the market on those prices. So you're not getting these great deals that you're getting 2, 3, 4 years ago. With 12 plus cap rates and stuff. You're not getting that right now. So that's kind of, unless a great opportunity is just presented to us. We've kind of steered away from the commercial real estate right now. But land development, particularly residential subdivision development, is hot. And, we've done some of it. We've always had some of that going on in Alabama, in the Birmingham area. And it just seems like the next logical step for us.
Yeah.
Until we find our way back in outdoor.
we'll be here with like Red Roof Inn. We'll leave the lights on. It's illuminated 24 hours a day. We'll get you back. We'll get you back. Who are some brands to revisit the NIL stuff at the beginning? Maybe we could do a little lightning round here. Who are some brands and some schools that you think should, like, who are your top 3? Like these 3 mashups need to happen. They need to be doing NIL sponsorships, and they need to be on billboards specifically. You got 3 favorites?
I don't have 3 favorites. I think that certain brands are going to do better with certain types of sports. I think, like basketball versus football, and different brands are going to do better with different colleges. But I can't pinpoint like specific athletes to brands. Do you have any?
That's fair. And that's a fair question back. So my friend Chris Mead, he's the CMO at CrossNet, and they were super early to the NIL stuff. They scooped up and they built CrossNet U in like the first 30 days. And they've got hundreds of, college volleyball athletes on the roster. And I'm just super waiting for them to put some of these student athletes up on billboards or wrapped buses. I know that they've got some folks down at the University of Texas, and I thought a wrapped bus driving around the campus. I mean, as a college student, could you be more excited? Could you be more excited to see yourself?
No, I don't think so. I would be really leery of doing any exclusive partnerships as a college athlete right now. If I'm going to be one of those that's halfway in demand, I don't know that I'm going to want to do that, because I just would like to keep my options open. But I know there's a few of them that have signed some exclusives and, I guess ruled them out for all the other brands except for that one. And I know that they get lots of money for those, but still, I think I would want to keep my options open. Now, I did see, a brilliant NIL marketing campaign with Arby's. Have you seen that one? And they mostly did it on social media, but they were looking for Arby's running backs. And so they're like, we'll send $500 to any Division II RB, just, like they gave them a little script, they videotaped it. But that would be a brilliant campaign to translate to outdoor as well, because you have RBs. Like, it's like, that was pretty clever.
Yeah, no, super clever. That's really fun one. I think it's I keep the book around, Rock and Roll Billboards of the Sunset Strip. Great piece. If you're listening and don't have it, certainly something to add to the coffee table. Robert Landau, over the course of 3 decades, took all of these great photographs of the iconic rock and roll billboards of the Sunset Strip and turned it into a coffee table book. And it's the Who, it's the Doors, it's the Beatles, and it's just absolutely iconic, hand painted, really, really incredible art. And they're doing a documentary, Sign of the Times, and some of the commentary was that these billboards really made the brands, or made the billboards made the bands bigger than they were. It made them larger than life. It made these unknown brands, there's a tongue twister of the day, iconic, right? It made these unknown bands iconic. And that same opportunity for brands to kind of break the norm and disrupt the expected, with NIL sponsorships using out of home is, I think, maybe the same type of opportunity that we saw in the 60s and 70s and 80s with those iconic rock and roll billboards. I think that exists right now for brands that want to work with student athletes. And this has been a really fun conversation. I think that folks are going to get something out of it for sure.
Well, I think, and the other interesting part about this NIL, it's new opportunities with NIL, is it's not just going to give opportunities to those guys. They're the more well-known college football players who are on TV every Saturday. Those are going to be your guys that are going to be, better for the OOH campaigns and stuff like that. But then the other thing that people are looking at when they're looking at the talent, because there's the talent and then there's the brand, those are the two sides, are their social media followings. So you can have some lesser known athletes who have just kind of built this influencer level social media following. Those are going to be just as valuable in that NIL world. And, that kind of leads into that whole conversation of influencer marketing in general and the trend towards that. And I think I posted on somewhere, I think in 10 years, you're just going to really see the bulk of marketing budgets go to outdoor and influencer marketing and, content creation, influence. What is do you have an opinion on that? Where does influencer end and content creator begin? Or is it the same?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that there's a place for both. I think that the right mix is both. I think as a brand to be able to create your own content from whether you're B2B or B2C, be able to create your own brand and create your own content is really, really important. But I think that it's a balance, right? And that influencer element, it's what was so hard to do in the 80s and 90s. And you had to be Nike and have huge monster budgets to be able to get talent and to get people, right? Why did they pay? Why was it Ken Griffey Jr. baseball? Well, because Ken Griffey Jr. being on the packaging sold more video games, right? Like the game wasn't different. Ken Griffey didn't personally design the video game for Nintendo 64, but they put his name on it and they sold a boatload more copies of it.
Yeah, influencer marketing is certainly not new. It's only new in the aspect that normal people can all of a sudden become influencers. You don't have to be a celebrity or some well-known athlete. That's this new trend is some chick that just started some blog or some TikTok account. Or
some guy starts a podcast about billboards.
This massive following and figured out how to use these little apps that make little cute videos or films themselves in the gym every day. Your normal people have this opportunity to now be an influencer, even though they're really not creating any content, I guess.
Well, all right, here's because as you were saying that, it made me think. And then I'm looking over at my little guy. My little guy just went back to his mom's, but he's got his Nintendo and stuff out. He primarily watches YouTube on the TV, the living room TV. Yeah. That's the new way of him watching TV is him watching YouTubers.
That's all I watch.
Who are equal parts influencers and content creators. Yes. And I think that the next level to that, and it's the piece that I see missing, and some of them have done it well, like Mr. Beast, I think has done it especially well. Oh my gosh. Is how do you unlock and how do you monetize your brand? Right. No one's getting rich being a YouTuber. They're getting rich monetizing the brand beyond the platform.
Exactly.
Right. When you see these videos of, I got 10 million views, I made $50,000 last year. Like nobody bought their Lambo with that $50,000. No, right? They found ways
outside. Making their money is when brands reach out and say, "I'll pay you, $20,000 to just be drinking this bottle every time you walk through Disney World." Or something like that. So it's really not the clicks. It's not the advertising revenue they're getting from their videos being on YouTube. I think that's where they all start. And I think that's because I've watched these guys. I'm a total nerd. And I've watched all of these Disney content creators. and it's a whole community, and they're so dramatic, and they bicker, and they, make all these snide comments about each other. So entertaining just to be on the outside watching it going, wow.
We should make a reality show about them.
The Disney, the Diz Talk community and Diz Twitter and all those. Yes.
And we'll just make like a broadcast, like television show,
a reality
about
show
the TikTokers.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. But it's funny because
TikTok.
I also watch these videos that show kind of they'll do this whole spiel about the value of the net worth of certain YouTubers. And it boils down to, I think, $4 per every 1,000 views. So if you look at a video and it has, 100,000 views, you can kind of tell how much they made off that video. Now, the great thing about these YouTube channels is that every day, it's not just the new one that they put out. They're getting residual views on all of those 10,000 old videos. And that's where they make their money. That's where they start really building up their income, their revenue. And I just find all that pretty fascinating. And there's only been a few of them who have been able to parlay that into an influencer status, to where then they also have a social media account, just an Instagram or something, where they get paid to hold somebody's or wear somebody's sunglasses or do whatever.
Sure.
You can be a great content creator and never be in front of the camera. You're always behind the camera, and that doesn't do you any good. For sure.
Like, I think, as you're saying, that Jake and Logan Paul, they've done that. They've transcended off of, they were on Vine. Remember Vines?
Yeah.
Right. Like, there we go. Aging ourselves. Right. Like they were experimenting on platforms super, super early, and they found ways to, and I think that's what we're going to see over the next 3 to 5 years, really the separation of the content creators who understand how to create brand beyond the platform, create businesses beyond just being influencers. I think that's going to be an exciting, kind of new chapter in business development. But yeah, back to the original question of, as a brand, you have to be a content creator as a brand. And I'm on the record as brand is bullshit and direct response is the only thing that matters. Like it's out there. You can find it. You can go back in the catalog at T-Row, and now Deanna, it's exactly that. If I look at the top 5 podcasts on audio and compare them to the top 5 episodes on YouTube, the top 5 YouTube episodes are all the oldest episodes, because it's that compound growth factor, right? It's that they've had that much more time to have exposure to audiences, versus the audio version is definitely more of a recency model. So I guess the moral of the story is you got to be everywhere. You do, and you got to be all things. Does your little one ever watch Dan TDM? Is he still a thing? Who is it?
He's like a gamer YouTuber, and he does Minecraft videos. He was so big at one point. My son is 14, but he was so big at one point that we actually traveled to Nashville to go watch him in some little theater. He did like an event, like a tour, and he had put together the stage show, and it all sprang from him being a YouTuber. I was like, what are we doing here? We're looking around at all these, parents that are sitting there in line waiting to get in the door. And then they bring down the merch cart, and everybody's forking out $50 for this, foam Minecraft
light up thing.
His T-shirts and all this stuff. And I'm like, what is going on?
It's the new Disney on Ice.
Yeah. He had blue hair. I don't know what he does now. He's an adult, but this, he figured out a way to capitalize them.
Those are the ones that weird me out a little bit. Those are the ones that when my sons, and I'm like, these guys are like not my age, but they're definitely not like 15-year-old boys.
Right.
They're like 20. That guy's got a wedding ring on, and they're doing like pranks at Walmart.
He had a baby. And his wife would come into the room sometimes, and he would talk to her, and Bailey was like, oh yeah, he has a baby now. And I'm like, it's just so weird.
So wild. We'll have to revisit this topic in a couple years and see how the world is.
Another kind of conversation.
Suppose so. Deanna, thank you so much for being here. Where do folks find you? You're super active on LinkedIn. Give them the lat long. What's the best way to get in touch?
LinkedIn is probably the best way. Just Deanna Berry.
Easy enough. Yeah. I think that's right.
I don't think I have my middle name or maiden name or anything there.
Nothing like that. We'll link to it in the show notes below, and super appreciate you being here. This has been a fun conversation. I don't know that either of us knew where it was going to go, but I think that we touched on all the things, and I think it's going to be one for the ages.
All right. Well, I enjoyed it.
Definitely. If you found this episode to be helpful, please share it with somebody else who could benefit. As always, make sure to smash that subscribe button down in the corner, and wherever you're listening to this on audio, please for the podcast to follow. We'll see y'all next time.
Quarter century, I finally came to my senses. I finally got my hand up on the tinted Benz, kid. I see the world clear through my tinted lenses. With the dream and the drive, the possibilities endless. Now print that, send this all the way to Tokyo. Take a trip down south, down to Mexico. Next stop, Shanghai, the world-class trade show. First class all the way, cause that's how we roll. Yeah, call us the rock star businessman. Rockin' shows, we handle business, man. We got our own future in the palm of our hands, cause divided we